Thanks, Rob. Tom, I don't want to cut you out. Do you have anything for us all that you would like to say?
No, obviously on this one, you're heading toward, I guess, a conclusion. So I gather that this will be up for vote, fairly soon. I'm not sure which meeting, but so most of the process is through on the Lippy annexation at this point. The one thing obviously is there are blanks obviously to fill in a proposed to be voted on annexation agreement and resolution. And I probably need some guidance at some point as to how to fill in those blanks. Obviously, the Planning Commission has made certain recommendations to fill in those blanks, mainly on water, sewer, roads are the three big ones that come to mind. So.
This is for Robert Graham. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Could you go over your reasons for dissenting, please?
First item is I always believe that as we look at Manchester in a whole, the more that we can plan it as such, the better off we're going to be. I will remind people of both planning and zoning and the town council that items such as the bypass, which was constructed around Hampstead, can no longer be continued on that same alignment because we did not control the ground that got developed. Therefore, we are stuck with the situation that we have now to deal with. Similar to that, we have a master plan roadway plan that goes through a portion of the Lippy property in order to connect Southwestern over to Route 30 as well in order to help relieve some of the traffic issues. So basically holistic planning is my number one reason for it. I'm also looking at a pending wastewater treatment plant that's going to have to be brought online and then sometime in the future. And this is also another way of helping to defer costs associated with that from the current residents as well. My recommendation was to add the additional capacity and the additional fees onto that, which was in the letter that we submitted to you.
I have a follow-up, if I may. And first is maybe I should have stated this up front. One is there's a feeling if you were in the public and you were reading, let's say, the news articles or just watching, that we are at a spot where we're voting on whether that piece of property, I think most folks would not identify that as 3 parcels, but rather 1, remains a cornfield or turns into a bunch of houses. And I think that's the overall perception out there. So one, I'd like to clarify, at least my understanding is we're not voting on whether the big piece of land across from the high school turns into houses or remains all a nice field for everyone to look at. It's whether or not it is remains 3 parcels with 2 of them being in the county, or 2 of them being in town, rather, 1 of them being in the county, or whether or not they all come into the town and is developed as 1 piece. So I think I'd like to confirm that. And 2, on to Vince's travel piece, and this could be for Mr. Graham or for anybody. My feeling on this particular property, obviously traffic is a component of everything that we do, is that this particular development, whether it's 20 homes or 40 homes, I don't know, or 30 homes or 40 homes, I don't know what the 2 numbers are, wouldn't add significantly to Manchester's traffic as much as most people would probably go south or across the street. Whereas if this, if there's a piece developed north of town, then that kind of adds to the traffic, because then those folks people tend to go south to work and then north back in the evening when need to get back through the intersection. So can any of you speak to, I guess, 1, I know I'm long-winded here, confirm my understanding on what we're really voting on, and 2, whether the traffic piece is as significant being on the south end of town where people that leave are probably going to get out and go on the bypass anyway.
My understanding, Mr. Mayor, that we were talking about two properties, one that was in town, which is known as the Old Town, and then there was the concurrent piece that was looking for annexation. Now, all throughout this quote, third piece of property, this has been kind of the mystery property that has really never been brought up till we've got into the later stages. So I don't really mean either way, if it's in town or if it's not, it goes either as part of the annexation or that third mysterious property that's been brought up recently is going to be added into the overall size of the development. I whether if it's in town, it's in town, it's subject to the zoning rules, and it is what it is. If it's then annexed in or bought in as part of property to the larger piece of property, then again, it'll be subject to density. So we don't know how many homes overall would be there. We are estimating somewhere in the 40 and area, 30 to 40 range. And I can assure you, and please the other counts, zoning, planning and zoning members can even chime in. We haven't heard, and I'm going to keep repeating it, we really haven't heard much about the third property. That really hasn't been a major part of this discussion until recently. So I think it's neither here nor there, the third property, but it is an issue that we will have to look at, depending on what your decision is. Traffic, I think.
Go ahead. Talk about traffic, and then I'm gonna jump back.
No, sir. If you have a statement about the property, please finish out the discussion, please.
Okay, I guess it's just my understanding, and for the record, for everyone that's not on the council doesn't know, I'm the mayor, but I don't have a vote. I'm not advocating one way or another. I am trying to facilitate or help facilitate this discussion. I think we have a good group here to do that. And so my questions are directed at that. So I thought that's really what we're voting on is this third property. We have three pieces of property. This is just my understanding. I could, and anybody correct me if I'm wrong, inside or outside of town. Two of them have some level of density. It's R15 or it's R20 or R10, whatever it is. And then one of them is in the county, and then maybe that's R20 or R40. I don't know for sure, but I know that's my understanding. And what we're voting on is whether or not that piece in the middle then becomes part of the town, and then we look at the whole thing holistically. And something that Mr. Hackett brought up is kind of been sitting with me since the last council meeting. He said, "Well, I guess I'm still kind of struggling. What makes the most sense for the town?" Even the people that came in said that. So do we have town, county, town with a piece of county in the middle that are kind of in our community, but are kind of not? And certainly, they aren't paying taxes with us, but we're still providing some services. Are we going to pull up the snow plow and then put it back down, 100 yards later? Like, I don't really understand those things, but kind of what I'm struggling with isn't what we're voting on is this mystery piece of property. We're not voting on whether or not there are going to be houses on that property. I think on that property, there's zoning. Yes, there's challenges, but that's up to the developer to navigate those challenges and come forward with plans that can be approved according to the rules. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I just, when I hear things from the community or people call me and they'll say, "Well, I not really want houses down there." Like, I understand. Here's my understanding of where we're at.
Right.
Ryan, this is Henry. I just want to kind of back up what Alex said. The third piece that Alex is referring to as sort of the mystery piece was a piece that was in town. When we were originally presented with the annexation proposal, it included Old Town, and then the piece that you refer to as the piece in the middle. And what was presented to us was the annexation was to bring that piece in the middle into the town. And what their purpose for bringing that, our understanding was to recapture some of the density that they were going to lose on the Old Town piece, because now Old Town has to comply with current environmental and stormwater management regulations. So the 40 lots that were platted on Old Town are no longer feasibly going to be constructed. It's just not going to happen between wetlands, buffers, and stormwater management for the development. They're not going to get 40 lots there. So what they were hoping to do was the middle piece is currently a well and septic piece. And because of the tiering that the state has established for well and septics, they were possibly going to get 6 or maybe 7 lots there maximum. And that assumed that they could get perks for those lots. So what they were trying to do was annex that piece to recapture density. When the commission voted not to support the annexation, when the developer came to the council meeting, all of a sudden this third piece, as Alex referred to it, which is located in the town, was offered up as part of the development, and that there was some discussion of a maximum cap of about 40 lots, which is what they had originally tried to get between Old Town and the piece in the middle. If my understanding is correct, Alex, that's how they were proceeding. And then they brought this piece in and said, well, we're going to include this piece as part of the development and we'll cap it at 40. So that's really the mystery piece, was that third piece in town, which we did not discuss in the original annexation work sessions. It wasn't there. But then to answer your other question, yes, it's not going to remain a cornfield. There, unless the economics don't make sense, they're going to build houses in Old Town and in that middle piece, whether it's in the county or in the town.
And Mr. Mayor, your question is correct. You are charged with deciding whether this piece of ground comes into the town or not, you and the council. It is the planning and zoning's job, should it come into town, to then administer the rules and regulations for subdivision on whatever ground there is, based upon, as Henry pointed out, the buffers, the restrictions, all the other setbacks that they have to take into account now.
I have a question. I don't know if Alex can answer it or Mr. Graham. I have a two-part question. One is, so I want to understand, if we do not annex, because I'm having this question, and as you said, with this third piece, it's starting to get confusing. How many houses are trying to be built if we do not annex, and how many if we do annex? That's my first question. My second question is, if we do annex and these houses come in, 40 houses or however many it is when you're going to tell me, who's going to be responsible for upgrading the sewer system? The taxpayer should not be. Are they going to put impact fees on each of these houses of $20,000 so that we can get our money back, so that we can do the new sewer system and the water and whatever else we have to do? Because I don't feel like the current taxpayer should be responsible for that.
Bob, you want it or you want me to start?
Sorry, I know I had a
That's
lot.
okay.
That's okay.
No, Alex, why don't you start, and I will, I'll bet clean up.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Councilwoman Smith, I would tell you that if you do not annex the property into town, the applicants will still try to build within property that they own to the best of their ability on current regulations. It would be hard for me to give you an exact number without going through the whole process. I think Mr. Leskinen gave a adequate idea of the Town of Manchester property would have to be well and perked, and there are strict regulations on that. So I'm just going to give you the same number he did, or maybe around 7. I believe, Henry, is what you said. So that, or you get 40 homes if you decide to annex the property.
Okay.
In question, the single property, you will get a total of somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 homes in a subdivision encompassing all that property. Now, does that answer your question as to what will and will not be built?
Yes, I just want to make sure I understood that part. Okay.
Okay, Bob, you have anything you want to clean up that question on?
Just want to clarify that.
Alex, can I interject one thing? I think she asked, Councilman Smith asked total amount. It's 27, if I remember, versus 40, not 7 versus 40. I think she wanted to know what the whole development would be.
Right.
If I remember the numbers right, it was 27 as is, and possibly 40 if we annex.
Right.
Those were the estimates that we came up with. Like Alex said, until we actually established the wetlands and the buffers and the stormwater management on Old Town, we don't know exactly what the density there is going to be. We know it's not going to be 40. We assumed, just looking at it very quickly and kind of giving it a quick overview, we figured it was probably going to be somewhere in the range of 20 houses at Old Town. And because of the septic and well requirements established by the state of Maryland with their tiering system, Michelle had looked into that and thought it was going to be 6, maybe 7 homes on the property that's the subject of the annexation request. So based on those estimates, we're looking at about 27 homes versus possibly 40 homes
Okay.
if the
On-
property's annexed.
So would,
Right,
would it be fair?
But to clarify, that is on the two original parcels. That 27 does not include the mystery third parcel, which,
Correct.
based on the way it was presented when it came to the council, the 40 was now distributed over the three parcels as opposed to the two when we were looking at it. In answer to your question about water and wastewater, my recommendation on this annexation, as it has been on all annexations, is that any property that's being annexed must contribute a premium to the hookup fees, to the infrastructure they construct, in order to help offset any possible future upgrades to the sewer plant. And when I say improvements, I mean if there's a deficit somewhere between that property and the wastewater, or somewhere between the well and that property, the developer's responsible for that right off the bat. They have to get it there. This residual takes into account other lots in town that are not currently on public water and sewer. For example, parts of Charmel are not on public water and sewer right now. That oversizing would take care of those residents. The additional fees take care of upgrades to the treatment plant, as I presented that condition. It's up to the council to decide if that premium should be put on there, if that's the appropriate premium to be put on there.
Okay,
Does that
thank you.
answer your question?
Yes, I just wanted to make sure, or I guess I should say, see how it's going to be handled. I just wanted to verify. I know I've read a lot of different things and been told. I just really would like to verify. Thank you.
Can I, because now I'm a little less clear than I thought I was. So, from a layman's view, there's one big piece of property over there. From our view, hey, we have two pieces and we have a mystery parcel or a new piece. So would it be fair to say, I think Henry came up with a 27 number, that if we were voting on two options, and option A was take the recommendation, do not annex, that the total number of homes out there, and by the way, I should say, while I'm saying this, that our number one goal as a town isn't limiting lot yield. I think it should be acting in the best interest of the town. That being said, sometimes that is limiting lot yield, sometimes it's not. But in option A, not annexing, proceeding with the recommendation, would be somewhere between 25 to 30, so we'll call it 27, and 40. And option B, which would be proceeding with the annexation, would essentially be, let's take the whole thing as one chunk, and we're kind of agreeing to 40 at that point, as long as they were able to meet all of the requirements. Now, my question comes in is, with this new mystery piece, does that potentially add to the 27? And if either yes or no, does that change the 40 under option B?
Mr. Mayor, this is Bradford Webb. May I jump in?
As far as I'm concerned, yeah, happy.
Okay. When we presented the annexation, this whole discussion wasn't contemplated by us, that there would be this issue of trying to count the lots that would be, that it would yield if it wasn't annexed. As you guys may recall, this annexation petition was made at the invitation of the Planning Commission at an earlier time.
I'm sorry, sir. Whoa, hold, excuse me, Mr. Webb. Whose invitation?
We were asked by the Planning Commission to do this annexation before we could bring the site plan, because it had to be done as one plan. This was like 3 years ago.
I'm not sure where you got that from, sir.
Okay, well, let that go for now. The point is, when we presented the land to be annexed, it was stuck in the middle of these two lots, of these two other parcels. And we mentioned the Old Town parcel because it already had 40 lots. And the reason we mentioned the Old Town parcel was, we wanted you to understand that it was never going to be more than 40 lots, that adding this piece wasn't going to change the density that had been approved many years ago. And we understand we can't get 40 lots on the Old Town now. The so-called mystery piece was always there. It was always on every concept plan that was previously shown to the Planning Commission in years past. And there are 40 lots intended to go across all three pieces. Now, if you don't annex the 25 acres in the middle, something that you don't know yet, I'm about to explain to you, because we didn't feel a need to share it with you because we didn't anticipate this conversation, because we anticipated, quite frankly, an easy annexation of an enclave, and then we come forward with the site plan down the road. That's what we contemplated. When Mr. Hill donated the land across the street, part of that land across the street where the high school is, he had off-conveyance lots available to him across the street associated with those parcels. Carroll County agreed, and it's in writing, to transfer 6 off-conveyance lots to the 25 acres that we're seeking to annex through this petition. So if it's not annexed, the yield on that property will be the 6 off-conveyance lots. And then on top of that, they get the 7 lots when they do the subdivision. So we're looking at 13 lots for the 25 acres. Our expectation is that whether you annex or not, 40 lots is what we're going to end up with, one way or another. We still just think it makes perfect sense for you to control the whole subdivision as one presentation with all 3 pieces joined together, and we deal with it in that fashion. Or we go for our 13 lots on the 25 acre parcel we're seeking to be annexed. We develop Old Town with you, and we come in with a site plan for the other piece that's adjacent to the annexation piece just north of it. So it's your call. It's going to end up being the same, but just to us, it makes perfect sense to do it this way. And previously, the town had told us that's what they wanted us to do.
So someone in the town told you that's what they wanted you to do?
Marty Hackett, do you want to jump in on that, because you were a participant in those conversations?
I'm curious kind of where all this came from. I just don't know this background.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead,
me
Marty.
too.
Good evening. All the conceptual plans that we did proposing a combination of the Old Town property, the property of Lippy that's already incorporated in the town, and the subject annexation that's before you this evening and it's been in front of you. Those sketches have always had approximately right around 40 lots. And those 40 lots were what we basically had decided on years ago, and utilizing obviously the environmental constraints of Old Town, the acreage that's already in the R15 zone that exists in the town today. That density of that, and you guys call it the mystery piece. Well, it's part of the Lippy farm, but it's part that's already been in town, it's one of these cleanup situations. And I hate to say that, but and it's occurred in obviously other locations. But the thing is that you have that part that's in town, you have the part that's in the county now, and then you tie into Old Town. So from a planning aspect, it seems totally reasonable to annex the property into town, and knowing that the town will control everything. It's very important to understand that this project is not approving any houses at this time, no lots, no layouts or anything. It's annexing a piece of property in the incorporated town, which will then get a town tax bill, which pays the piggyback tax to the town, puts it into your purview of complete control of the Planning Commission, at which time, and the Planning Commission's letter to the town all those items, I believe all those items pretty much are adequate facility issues that you have complete control over. If the water and sewer is inadequate, you don't approve the plans to go forward. So you have that control today. It's basically putting it all under the control of the town. Previously, what happened is, and when we sit there and say the town requested, over the years, back in 2016, we've been going in front of the town and we couldn't file an annexation until such time that the town put it into the future growth area for the town of Manchester. That qualifies us for annexation. And we knew that we were just waiting for that to occur in your 2018 master plan for us to then go ahead and file that annexation. Our intent always has been and still is to process the project through the town with the 40 lots, approximately 20 to 22 we believe we can get on the Old Town property based on the usable land. There's about 13 or 14 of them that are in the R15 zone that we believe we can get, maybe more, maybe, one or two more, or maybe one or two less. And then in the area that's in the county today, which is actually zoned R10,000 in the county, but this property is in the water and sewer service area. It's in the priority service area. So it's expecting to get water and sewer. But the town, as far as I know, except for projects that were built prior to the sewer and water being around, the couple hundred units that you talk about, the town doesn't allow properties in the county to hook up to water and sewer. But this one's in the priority area. It's in the service area, plan to go into the town. Again, all the other items that we've talked about or that, and then are concerns. And and you guys, you're the approving authority and you have the concerns and rightfully so. But we have to deal with that on a development aspect. And that's something that comes later on down the road. Again, this is solely, there's a project that's going to happen, as Mr. Webb said. It's just a matter of how we do it. It'd be nice to just have one entity to deal with, the town, and have them control everything. And from a planning aspect, and that's where I believe it needs to be. So if there's any other questions, I'd be glad to to answer anything.
I do want to clarify one point. When you brought a plan to us in 2016, that plan was brought to us related to the master plan roadway that goes through the property and its connection over to Route 30.
Right.
It showed land bubbles to the side. It did not show development on all three parcels at that time other than bubbles. And we had asked for studies to show other road connections off of that master plan roadway. So that's what our discussions were in 2016. There was no invitation to come and do a development. And I'm the one that's sitting here saying, I want to do this as a uniform. I'm just reminding everyone of the facts of what we reviewed in 2016 and the limits that we were discussing at that point in time.
Mr.
Glad you
Grant,
brought that. I'm glad you brought that up, Bob, because that's what I was going to say. We at no time reviewed a development and said, yeah, bring that in for annexation and approve it. And to imply that that was done is being dishonest, quite frankly, because that was never done. And I'm glad you clarified that.
We actually sent, I believe we came in front of the commission a few times conceptually, and we had layouts of roadways that actually tied into right alongside the pump station adjacent from Maple Grove Road. We had those, and we've had various layouts where we've actually even showed lots that were in the mystery parcel that you're referring to. We actually even talked about the connection from the Southwest Avenue up to the Carroll property at one point in time, because the existing grades were non-conducive to make that actual road connection into the Harrow property. So I'm kind of lost. I know we came in with some bubble plans initially, but we've been in front of the planning commission with some layouts that basically showed, and we've always talked about these 40 lots, unless I'm really missing something. Now, we never officially submitted anything, but we came in with our boards on our easels and did presentations to the commission over the past, since about 2016 to about 2018, where you guys were working on the master plan update.
Right, and that was related to the master plan roadway going through the property because we were in our master planning process. Anything that was shown outside of that master plan roadway or providing justification as to why it should have been included in the new growth area was just that. It was a picture on a piece of paper. It had nothing to do with the lotting.
Yeah, I'm remembering that. I mean, there were sketches with lot layouts that we actually presented. But we did do some bubble plans too. But and again, regardless, this Southwest Avenue, the master plan street through the planning process, will all be in the purview of the town, going through the process with the planning commission, subject to the annexation being approved. And that's all, again, that's all part of the planning process that you would control.
Agreed.
Alex, I've got a couple pieces of information that I think the commission might like to understand, from my view, that I remember over the last few years. I might interject, or is that conversation still going?
No, go ahead.
All right. So one of the things that hadn't been brought up tonight is during the planning process on the county piece, they have an approved bridge that goes across the environmental wetlands there that would also allow them to have an entrance to the development that's not at the intersection. One of our recommendations was to have the entrance to the development at the intersection of the high school to help with traffic. And I know traffic's been brought up several times tonight. But one of my concerns that I've mentioned several times in the past is how you get into the development and the queuing of traffic on that road. And it was brought up earlier, turning northbound or southbound out of the development. And this is one of the things that would probably lean towards annexation and not against annexation, because we can control part of the piece. Right now, from what I understand, it's very possible, not an exact science, it's possible that the entrance to the development could be between the old farmhouse and the stoplight on the north side of town, on the north side of the stoplight, which would mean all the traffic that Alex mentioned earlier coming home, turning left into the development, there's not enough roadway on the high school side to make a go around lane to an entrance to that development. I actually went out and took pictures of the side of the road. There's only like 9 feet of road and shoulder there before you get into the wetlands issue that the school had to deal with. So part of the positive side for annexing for me was that we could begin to ascertain some our input where we would like the entrance to the development and move it towards the intersection. The other piece is this extension of Southwest, and maybe somebody correct me, but we we need the county piece in order to make that roadway go through. And maybe Mr. Hackett, I do remember a couple of different diagrams where Southwest wound down into a cul-de-sac that was going to be proposed into the county piece.
Hey, Scott, I think you're getting a little bit too far into the weeds.
Okay, so where I'm going with that is back to the high level discussion of we're looking at 27 versus 40 again. Let's just say that It's a good time to be building houses right now. And I expect that this development's going to go through whether or not we make a decision to annex or not. I just trying to put some information out there that would help dealing with this single party, that if our commission had control of the whole situation, we could benefit the town or help the town by helping with the infrastructure and the control of traffic, controlling the water and sewer, and not having to deal with well and septic and future things like snow removal and that type of thing. So I wanted to throw those couple comments out there.
All right, Councilwoman Smith, I'm sorry, we got kind of long-winded in the first answer. The second part of your question again, ma'am?
You're on mute, Melinda.
Sorry. The second part was about the sewage situation. I know that the infrastructure, from what I've been told, if we add a certain amount of houses, could be an issue. And I know that's going to be a huge taking for the town. And I was wondering how that would be taken care of with adding these houses if we annex them. Where was this money coming from versus the current taxpayers and things like that? Where are we going to get this money from? Is there going to be impact fees that are going to be taken in that further down the road we're going to have to use for this, or what's the plan for this, or is there a plan?
I believe Commission Member Graham eloquently explained the fact that that is all within your purview as part of your decision for annexation or not, whatever you and the mayor and the council decide. But that is something certainly you all have control over as part of this property. And I think Bob made a recommendation that a lot of those costs to fill in any gaps should be spread out through your different developers and homeowners annexing into the town as homes are built. Am I correct, Bob, in paraphrasing what you said?
Yep. That's the way I understood it as well. I just wanted, when you asked what the second half was, I just wanted to make sure that, you were informed on what I was asking.
Great.
So
very good.
Just a thought on that, like we do have water replacement fees and we do have impact fees now. And it doesn't mean we shouldn't have a broader discussion, which is really larger than I think just this parcel or this annexation, about whether or not the fees that we have now adequately cover our needs. But I think what we can't do is sort of say like, well, the last one to the party pays for, the next 500 or something. So it has to be something equitable, and whether or not what we have now is equitable, can be debated. But yeah, we should kind of add that to a broader discussion. I don't know if we can solve that right here.
I would put that on the front burner, Mr. Mayor, because you have about 120 homes right now in the pipeline. So that discussion, I would tell you, you're going to quickly step up to another level of water need and sewage treatment. So you may want to have it would be my recommendation for you to have those conversations sooner than later.
I think, without saying too much, and not that it's sensitive, it's just that I think it's a much broader discussion. Those conversations are happening and have happened. I don't know all the answers are there, unfortunately, and some of those answers I think are going to come at the state and national level as well. As we're not the only municipality that's going to run up against adequate facilities, but there's still population goes up and need goes up for people to have homes, places. There's going to be a push, without getting too political here, to have some higher density and more affordable housing in let's call it suburbs, like where we live. That's going to put pressure, and we can't solve all those issues with a $5,000 impact fee. So those things are going to happen, and the discussions will continue to happen. But it is a valid point, and I agree with you, both of you actually, that we do need to keep an eye on that and be discussing that. Probably everybody on this call, right, and staff, planning and zoning, and the elected folks. I had a question for Mr. McCarron. So going back to something that Mr. Webb said with the 6 off conveyance slots. Obviously, the first I've heard of that. I know we don't have a document in front of us, but can you speak a little bit to at least within what you know now? I don't expect you to have all the answers. So if what we would look at that piece of property, that 25 acres, and say, okay, well, that's 6 or 7 based on density and or the ability to get perks and wells and those sort of things. Is that assumption correct, that that now becomes 12 or 13 or so based on what Mr. Webb said?
Yeah, I mean, I know very little about that. Brad and I spoke about that maybe a week and a half ago, or maybe a week ago or something like that. And it was not, it was in passing really. So I have not seen, the document. I would urge that we, request it and look at it, but obviously the assertion is made, and it, at face value seems to have some merit, again, subject to review of what the document actually says, that it could increase the lot yield from what perhaps we had been assuming, without annexation, in other words.
Yeah, and this isn't a trial. I don't expect to see it right now. I'm just taking on face value. Does that mean in the overall thing, again, going back to a simple mind like mine, if we look at that entire piece of property now, are we now saying, hey, this is in the 33, 35, 40 range versus option B of 40? Does that number then climb our previous number of not annexed, so what I'm calling option A right now? Does it, let's say, automatically assume that's now +6?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the assertion, and that would be my reading of it, again, at face value. Yes.
And that assumes that they get adequate perk tests on the property. And I'd just like to add a comment. This is kind of going back to the third piece, and now tonight we're hearing about 6 off conveyances. It seems like we're getting information on kind of an as need to know basis. And quite frankly, as a planning commission member, I don't appreciate that. I mean, I think these issues should have been presented up front as part of the discussion. I don't know why you would hold that back from the planning commission when you're presenting an annexation. Just like the piece in town, which there seems to be a dispute whether it was ever really presented to us as part of the original annexation. It just seems like when we put up an issue, then all of a sudden other information comes out. And instead of just being forthright and saying, we've got 6 off conveyance pieces over here in addition to the 6 that could potentially be there. I just don't like operating that way. I like to have all the information in front of me when I'm making a decision. And it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I have to be honest.
I'll go one step further. This is like pulling the 5th ace out of your sock during a poker game, because now this really could make what we planned, and we went through all those meetings for our future zoning and planning things. This makes a big difference. This could change a lot of positions that we took. Nobody knew about it. It's another secret deal that our lovely county has made for certain things. So I agree with Henry. This is pretty ridiculous. This is, let's pull it out at the last minute so I know I get what I want. I'm sorry, gentlemen, this is dishonest business. We've been open and forthright about our disagreement. We let things stand as they may, but here we go. We're peeling the onion back and we're getting the ugly taste. So I don't know what you want to do about it, Mr. Mayor, but that's a big deal. That's a pretty big deal to me.
Yeah, I hear you guys, and I support you in your feelings for sure. It's news to me, but I'm going to go back to something that I said before, and most of the folks, Woodhaven we've dealt with or have known for a good while, is that we understand what your motivation is. You guys are in business, we get it, and so therefore limiting costs and maximizing lot yield is in your best interest, and that's not necessarily from your standpoint an evil interest. I mean, I think that makes sense. Our viewpoint isn't to limit lot yield. Our view, we're coming from a place of needing to do the best we can for the town. So having all the information, having the cards on the table helps us do that. And so, and I don't have a strong feeling either way on this thing right now. I kind of came into this call doing well, I mean, I've been aware of this for a good while and did research, but wanting to talk to everybody and talk through and kind of hear it from the horse's mouth. So I understand the frustration on the part of the guys. Henry and Alex spoke up right there. I've known them both for a couple of decades, and they both work on a volunteer basis in the best interest of our community. So I understand their frustration in what they're saying.
Mr. Mayor, may I
to your
may I
point,
speak?
okay, go ahead, Brad.
Okay, guys, we were trying to mislead you or withhold any information that we thought you needed. It wasn't until this session that I appreciated the impact or the discussion of the different potential lot yields between with annexation or without the annexation. It wasn't brought up simply because to us, and I guess we've underestimated, the resistance to this, that bringing in this middle piece and giving you control over the whole thing, that this was going to be a rather straightforward annexation petition. How many lots we were going to get from the county if it didn't get annexed was we didn't even talk about it until recently when it was like maybe this might not happen. What do we do then? It was under no circumstances were we trying to intentionally keep something from you that you obviously feels important. We did not appreciate how important it was to you, and I apologize for that. But tonight I heard loud and clear you were talking about the disparate lot yields, and so I needed to give you that information tonight so you would know what was coming. I think it'd be much worse down the road if you turn down the annexation on your belief that there'd only be 7 lots in the 25 acres, and then later we spring the 13 lots on you. That would have been far worse. So again, I apologize for the confusion, and trust me, nobody was trying to intentionally mislead you guys in any way. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that wasn't necessarily my implication that it was being misled. We just like to have all the information available to us when we're sitting there making important decisions on behalf of the town.
Understood.
Mr. Mayor, you ready to move on to the traffic issue? I think we're pretty much where we're going to be with the lot portion.
Okay, so to sum it up, again, my simple mind, no annexation. We're looking at a portion of it outside of the town and something a lot yield. The most likely scenario, I know there's a lot of things to be determined, in the 30s. With annexation, we're talking about the whole thing being within the town and an established lot yield of 40. Is that fair to say at this point?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, I'm good to move on then.
So I think the traffic scenario is something that has been borne upon the town, whether we want it or not. The poor economics of the state of Maryland and choosing to hire tax residents has forced a lot of people who live in the, say, the Hampstead, Manchester area or the upper northern parts of Carroll County to move to Pennsylvania for what people believe is a better taxing situation, better value for their home, better living conditions. For whatever reason, people have left our county and our state and have headed to Pennsylvania in rather large numbers. With that being said, we see an influx of people who have come up from areas of Montgomery, Prince George's, Baltimore County, Baltimore City, all looking for a lovely place to live and realizing that the Carroll tax shield is relatively low. So with all that being said, and the development that we've already committed to as a town and we're required to commit to as a town, we have traffic. And some days, traffic goes from the light in town all the way down, backed up through the intersection in Greenmount, through the circle and back onto the Hampstead portion of the bypass. Some of us face traveling south in the morning. That goes from Main Street and Route 27, goes all the way down past the Christmas tree farm, almost down to the intersection of another development that we approved Haley Hills. So we have rather large traffic backups, and for the most part, I'll say that they alleviate themselves. They start sometime in the 6 o'clock hour and alleviate themselves sometime by 9 a.m. in the morning side, and they start anywhere from 3 to 3:30 when school lets out, all the way into the 6 or 7 o'clock hour. And we've actually been lucky with COVID and kids not going to school because teachers don't want to work and all those kind of things. So we're kind of not seeing those backups right now. But whenever we get back to normal, the town will be a parking lot. So any other development that you add is only going to add to not only through traffic without a bypass, but also people wishing to do business in and around town traffic. So with that being said, now we have a development looking to get has preliminary approval, looking to get final approval, which sits on the old Burwager livestock property for some 30 homes, which will now probably back up traffic from Westminster Street and the square all the way back up to the fork in the road past the Catholic Church. And then we haven't even begun to talk about what our police department is trying to do, is to abate the through traffic that runs through our neighborhoods as it tries to get around the congestion in town. So with all that lovely explanation, I'm certainly, we can all see that traffic is certainly an issue. So it doesn't matter where we build, it's always going to be an issue for the foreseeable future, because there is no bypass in our current future, at least not for the next 5 or 6 years. And I certainly don't see the next governor in 2 more years even wanting to touch a bypass. So that's where it sits. It's a fact. There's no way to get around it. We don't have much of a choice. So really the only other thing you have is the school and how you would handle, or how you think you would handle, sewage treatment and water generation for these developments, or any land annexed, excuse me.
So Alex, just to jump in here, I agree with everything you're saying. I mean, traffic's relative, and it's not great at points in our town. I don't know that there's a plan or a foreseeable option where it's not going to be great. Too many of the factors are outside of our control. Couple of just points. Again, I'm not advocating for anything. I'm just kind of dumping, I think what I know is that Ordinance 138, which is our adequate facilities ordinance, gives our ranges on these things. That would be either a yellow light or a red light in terms of if it's rated something A, B, C, D, E, whatever it is on traffic, that becomes a red light or yellow light. The schools have, obviously we don't control the schools. Those things have percentages so that, we're able to pump the brakes if we don't have adequate schooling, which is really what it was when we created that back before Manchester Valley existed. I think is kind of when that came in, early 2000s is my memory, when we had very little water. The tables were real low, and we had really severely overcrowded schools. So I think those things kind of will take care of themselves, in the sense that we laid out the rules and the groundwork that a developer would need to follow in order to meet those metrics, or be aware of the metrics and to fall into place. So I think that's kind of where that's at. What I think we need to be careful as a town is saying that we're going to selectively have opinions based on how we feel and apply those where we like and where we don't like. We can't do that. I'm not saying that's what's happening here. I'm saying, well, we can't go and say, well, I'm very concerned about these 20 homes with water and sewer and traffic, but I'm not as concerned with these other 20 homes, water, sewer, and traffic. And I know an annexation is different in that, but I do think that we as leaders in the town need to kind of look at things, each one of them the same. Like, let's set the rules, and then we expect the folks that come in with a plan to meet or follow those rules, and then it works or it doesn't.
Well, I think on the other hand, Mr. Mayor, you do have control. I think the thing is in annexation, you do have control. That's why they're asking to become part of the town's governmental structure. and land. When you have land such as Burwager's property or anything else that's already in the town with a value added to it, that's where you really, it's already set, and we abide by the facilities ordinances that are there. And that's what we would do as the Planning and Zoning Commission. What we're trying to tell, I think what I'm trying to tell you at least, is that you do have control, whichever way you decide to go, and the council decides, that is always in your purview. I'm just simply telling you that the traffic you do have some control over, some you don't. Everything else you do have control. You have direct control, whether you think that you and the council believe this is good for the town. That's the decision you have to make. We're just telling you what we see from a planning and zoning perspective, with the ability to forecast and look ahead to see what is in the pipeline and what may come forward from our decisions that we made in our master plan. So that's what we're here to do, to give you that information and allow you to make the decision you feel you need to make.
I agree with that, and I think that kind of goes back to why the why the expected lot yield between what I'm calling option A and option B right now was so big, because there's advantages and disadvantages to the town and to the community under both plans. You know, having 13 homes out, which are really kind of in, there's disadvantages to that, right? I mean, there could be open burning, people shooting guns and riding four-wheelers, and they're not paying taxes into the same things that we're doing. You know, but also they're not using the sewer, at least now. Who knows in 30 years if the state would come in and say these wells are no longer any good and therefore you have to hook them all up. But it's hard to foresee or plan for that at this point. But there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Having that lot yield number, or expected lot yield number, most likely, is an important part of that. So I hear what you're saying. I agree with you. More traffic is bad. Not having a reasonable solution that we can kind of point to at some point in the future is bad. We don't have that. We just don't. Whether we build zero more homes or zero more homes get built in West Manheim, traffic's still going to be jammed up in Manchester for the foreseeable future. There's not a great option for getting it around that I can foresee. So I think I'm agreeing with you, but that's why I kind of feel like that lot yield number is important.
No, I just think we see the things from two different perspectives. You're the one that has to make the political decision. We don't. We're just giving you the hardcore planning and zoning, downright open and honest where we sit. And as we saw in the vote stands where the commission thinks that what we believe will happen or what should happen. Final decision is still up to you, Mr. Mayor, and the council. That is your charge from the citizens of Manchester. So we respect that. And
yeah, to be clear, it's up to the council. I actually don't have a vote on this.
okay.
You know, but I'm kind of like you, where I'm trying to help facilitate the discussion I think will lead to the information leading the decision makers to the best outcome for the town. You know, other than that, and other than living here, I don't have a stake in this.
Okay. Anybody else from the council have any questions on that property?
Alex, that traffic piece, I just want to add, this is what made my final decision on it, was this traffic impact on the town. All the other things being considered, the number of lots and all, didn't play as hard to me as the traffic impact. That particular development has a different traffic impact than the other three that are the other ones that are proposed on the other end of town. I think it's a severe traffic impact. And at the end of the day, that alternate entrance just bothered me, that there's an option out there that development could potentially have an entrance other than the intersection at the school. If it does, to me, the severity of it is extreme. And so, and then the relief, if we do get the extension of Southwest, there's also the potential that some relief traffic from this development could go up north and come out south. South of the intersection as some relief through Charmille. Not that we want that to be a heavy used intersection, but maybe, 10 or 12 cars from that development might help that intersection. But at the end of the day, my final decision came from us being able to control that the entrance to this development has to be that intersection. Because I see the severity of it any other place other than that intersection as being just, I struggle for another word other than severe. But I just wanted to make that statement again.
Yeah, the people on Charmel, well, we saw that at the last town meeting, and also I am getting daily calls from them saying that they can't take any more traffic on Charmel. So if it's going to be an issue that the people from the new development are going to come out of Charmel, that's going to be a bigger issue. Charmel is already really, to get out of there is very difficult to make a left to go north. I get, everybody has, you can go any way you want to, but if they're going to be able to come through Charmel and go out that way, that's going to cause an even bigger issue. That's what I'm afraid of.
In some ways, and I'm sorry to cut you off, Councilwoman Smith, like in some ways, depending on how this is configured, and to Scott Henderson's point, if we're able to collectively improve the intersection as it comes out to 30, wouldn't it maybe even be better for our Charmel in terms of the traffic flow going out of there? Because if there was again, I won't get too far ahead in this, but if that was a better light and a better intersection, and Charmel was made right in, right out, similar to like a Freidinger, then everybody that wants to either go straight on Maple Grove or make a left would be forced through the new southwest extension and wouldn't even be going to the end of Charmel and sitting and waiting to make those lefts in the morning or afternoon.
One thing that people need to keep in mind, Route 30 is a state road. We can recommend, we can suggest and advise. At the end of the day, any connection onto 30 is going to be subject to state highway approval. Now, state
Correct.
highway normally likes things to intersect in nice, clean T's and crosses, but we don't control that road. So,
Mr. Graham,
yes, ma'am.
thank you for bringing that up, because that was going to be my question. We can sit here and talk about where we would like the intersection or where we would like it, but ultimately, from what I'm understanding from what you just said, we don't have a final say on that, correct? Because that is a state highway road.
That is correct.
Okay,
We can suggest, we can request, but we do not control that roadway. Now, what the council can do is the council can say, if the annexation is voted in favor of, that a connection from the end of the existing southwest to 30 in a location as approved by state highway has to be done in phase 1. That is something that's within your purview.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
So, Bob, and this may be an opportunity for Mr. McCarron to weigh in here too, but I'll ask Bob first. Are you talking about some, again, forgive me if these terms are layman terms, contingent annexation, saying these are the upfront, that the intersection would have to come out and be configured with Maple Grove and be part of phase 1, so that we're able to relieve traffic and create a safer situation, as that's one of the goals of the town?
I'm saying that the town, as a condition of annexation, can say, phase 1, you have to connect from southwest to 30 in a location approvable by state highway, and that the town needs to be a negotiating member of that intersection.
Gotcha.
Not that they can just go drop a location, say, well, state highway approved it, without having input from the town.
Gotcha. I think I understand. Hey, this is a different company. It's 8:15, and it's communicating with town staff here. Let's just keep an eye on the time and stick with a hard cutoff of PM. If it goes that long, if everybody is agreeable to that, Obviously don't want to limit any conversations, kind of given like a 45-minute warning here to get out the topics that we want and try to stick to that 9 p.m. cutoff, respect everybody's time, if everyone's all right.
Anybody else have any questions before we move on to the Patriots Overlook?
If I could just make sure we all understand the process going forward, and Mr. McCarron, please correct me if I'm wrong. When we get to the meeting where we will make this decision, if someone believes they want to vote for the annexation and somebody seconds it and the majority rules, it'll be annexed. Or someone can make a motion to annex it with some of the conditions presented by planning and zoning or other conditions. Again, it's second, majority, it's annexed under those conditions. For example, what Bob said, that'll be the process at our next meeting or when we decide to take this on.
Yes, with the caveat, of course, that the applicant can, or the petitioner can reject the conditions. And what flows from that may be a rejection of the annexation or its withdrawal, perhaps. The conditions have to be agreed to by the petitioner.
I understand. Thank you.
So it could be if that becomes a condition, like let's say that, there's, A, B, and C conditions. If the council makes that motion and it passes, we give them like 30 days to accept the conditions. And if not, then the motion would fail or the annexation would cease, I guess, at that point. Is that correct?
Correct. And in my experience, that period between the public hearing and the vote oftentimes is spent discussing internally at first what conditions we as a town would propose, and in turn negotiation, if you will, with the petitioner as to what they might or might not be willing to accept. So oftentimes there's sort of a negotiation period here between the public hearing and the actual vote, so that, when you're there voting, you're not kind of on the fly, sort of developing these conditions and on the fly as well, hearing from the developer whether they accept or not. So,
Gotcha. So to that point, and I know that this has not been a fast process, but I think that everybody would agree we have not been intentionally dragging our heels. But to your point, Mr. McCarron, it's October 27th today. Our scheduled meeting is November 10th. It's 2 weeks from today. If we were going to go into a period where we were going to convene, maybe with you as legal counsel, to come up with conditions we would propose, then talk with the developer and see if we can get to a meeting of the minds without doing that as part of a regular business meeting. Does it make sense to not plan?
I think he froze.
You guys able to hear me?
and now,
Yeah.
I'm going to stop the video, see if I can get enough signal here to at least be audio.
While we're waiting for Ryan, may I ask a question? So when we decide to vote on annexation or not, we will impose conditions of development at that time. Is that my understanding? So it would not be purely, do we want to bring in this property or not, but we'll bring in the property with these conditions in the event it gets developed. I'm just asking,
yes,
just making sure I got it clear.
yes.
So,
Now,
one motion and second could be just to annex it, period, right?
Yep.
Another could be a motion and second to annex under certain conditions.
yes.
So
At that point, we would go off and start discussing those conditions. discuss it with the developer?
Well,
Are you guys able to hear me if I stop the video?
yes.
Okay. I'm sorry to cut you off, Tom. What I was saying was, and I think this goes to Vince's point too, like, there's probably some cutoff in what we would want to impose or ask for as conditions versus what would take place as part of the normal development process,
Right.
concept, preliminary, and final. So you know, can say like, well, you know, you can only plant oak trees or something like that, like, you know.
Right.
But what I was saying was, and I guess I'm asking for some advice here from the council and maybe from council as well, is we're on October 27th. The meeting is scheduled for November 10th. We had planned on holding a vote that night, and that's why we're kind of trying to get everybody the information tonight. If there is some consensus to say, hey, we'd at least like to have the option to have a, let's call it conditional annexation, we would need to maybe get together, maybe with council and discuss what things could be in there, and then maybe spend some time with the developer trying to get to a meeting of the minds. So does it make sense to plan to hold that vote that night, then possibly look at conditions, or to spend time over the next month with a couple of meetings and let's get the folks in the room, talk about what the conditions might be, and then plan to have that vote in December?
Just my 2 cents worth, and in my experience, the latter makes for a more orderly meeting when you sit down and vote on the annexation.
That would be my feeling as well. Again, I don't want to unduly delay things, and I'd actually want to have the developer weigh in here and be okay with that scenario. What I wouldn't want to do is vote it up or down, yes or no, and then discuss the conditions and merits. I'd rather spend the time, discuss the conditions and merits, then vote the whole thing up or down as a package. But I'm open to what the council thinks about that as well.
I don't have strong feelings either way.
It sounds
So
like.
to clarify,
Go ahead, Jen.
this is the first annexation that I've been a part of in my time on council. We heard earlier in the meeting that the developer and his crew seemed to be under the impression that this would be a fairly easy, I don't want to misquote or anything, but a fairly easy annexation. If we go through the process of, and this is just because I'm trying to wrap my head around this, coming up with possible, I don't want to say limitations, that's not the right word, but whatever word you used, Mayor, is that setting the message prematurely one way or another on a decision? You know what I'm trying to say?
I do, and I'm speaking for myself here when I say I don't think so. I think the message that it sends is that the potential, most folks in the community are concerned about lot yield and traffic. Those things exist under what I'm calling either option A or option B. I think the message that this sends is that we're trying to be as careful as we can. I think the planning and zoning did that. They spent a lot of time. I don't know that I'm ready to advocate for or against this, but if this is 1 or 2 more meetings and another month in order to reach the best conclusion for the town, which is I think what we need to drive towards. I don't think the fact that we're saying we need to take a month to consider what's best says that, you know, either way. That's my opinion. Hey, I got one more thing here, and I do not want to shortchange Patriots. So Alex, if you're okay, we might need to move over to Patriots and the fact that we have gone to almost 8:30 here, if we need to move that 9 o'clock deadline, Mr. Powers, we won't shortchange you in your presentation or discussion.
I want to make one more comment because I think what Councilwoman Warner was trying to say is if it's already in the minds of the council to not approve this, are we just unnecessarily delaying it?
I would say if that's the case, then you guys make that motion. I think what I'm saying, right now is we're all sitting here on this meeting, listening and considering things. Does it make sense to listen and consider? That's, again, just my opinion. You guys could have voted this down last month if you wanted to too.
Well, I have one additional thought, and correct me if I'm wrong. Early in the meeting, somebody, I can't remember who, made it clear that we were merely talking about annexation. To me, this has morphed into development. And now I've never been through this process. I may be speaking out of turn, but I would swear that somebody said, hey, we're just merely talking about annexation. This is not about development, but then it morphed into all of that. So I don't know how this is supposed to go. If that's how this is supposed to go, that's fine. If it's, back to the way it was at the very beginning, then we've made it far more complicated at this stage than maybe it should be. But I don't know. This is the first time I've been through this.
I would have to agree with Vince. I feel like went from an annexation or not an annexation to now we're involved in the development of it and everything else, which I think it's getting a little far beyond what we should be dealing with at this point.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may, we obviously a developer for a clean annexation and defer the rest of the discussions until the subdivision, the site plan process with the planning commission. When we all have a lot more information, then traffic studies can be performed. You have a plan that you're looking at. State roads can be consulted, instead of just guessing what might happen down the road. Nothing is lost if you do a clean annexation, bring the property in so you control it. All of these issues, and anybody in there, if I'm wrong on this, just say so. But all of these issues remain alive. Those balls are still in the air and can be resolved at that time. And the alternative, if you were going to insist on conditions, then the developer would prefer that the vote be delayed and not have the vote on November the 10th, and allow you time to consider what conditions you might want to attach to the annexation, and give the developer time to consider them, and perhaps we can discuss them. But our preference, again, is to defer all of these questions to what we believe is the proper time. And that's when you have a site plan in front of you, and you have the studies in front of you, and you have conversations from State Road in front of you. That's the time to do this. Thank you.
Mr. Webb, with all due respect, I feel like there's so much more information we've received tonight that we didn't have before, that I have to tell you, I have a lot of thinking and a lot of questions to speak to the council about, and the mayor, because I feel like after you said that there were some things you were going to hold back, and then you decided to tell us, that really concerned me. So that's just my feeling on it, but I will, I'll speak to the council, and we'll I guess decide what we're going to do at the next meeting. Thank you.
And one more thing, and then I'll be quiet, just so everybody, make sure we all understand. The annexation resolution and agreement are written such that we approve the annexation. So if someone makes the motion to approve it, it's already in that resolution and agreement stated that way.
So what I'm hearing right now, and I believe, just speaking on behalf of the developer, they're not in a hurry for us to make a decision. Melinda, Dale, basically the count saying, hey, they'd like to see more information. So at this point, when we say this is off the table for November the 10th, I'm losing.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I only got like every third word of what you just said. Do you mind repeating?
Yeah, I will. I got a booster. I know you said this problem before. No one else is listening at 8:30, and I'm still lagging out. Basically, what it said is, if Mr. Webb speaking on behalf of the developer, it sounded like the majority of the council was saying, hey, maybe we don't have enough information. Can we say this vote is off the table for November the 10th, and let's regroup as a council, and then let's we want to move forward from there with requesting more information. And I want to see if that sounds like a fair way to proceed from here, from the council and from Mr. Webb. And then we do have to switch over to Mr. Powers.
Is this something that we as a council should have a meeting on to discuss versus having this discussion here? Just asking that.
So the answer to that question is, if that meets the requirements to close the meeting, we can have a discussion with legal counsel regarding procedure and things. If it's a discussion about the merits of doing it, that's an open meeting, and that meeting would be open. So we'd have a council meeting or another advertised meeting. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, you really can't close the meeting except for very limited reasons, and the only reason to close it for legal advice would from what I'm hearing, would be to ask, can we lawfully postpone the vote from November 10 to say December or something? The answer to that I can comfortably say is yes, you can lawfully do that. The rest is really a sort of decision by council as to how logistically they want to tackle this.
Yeah, I think part of, and Tom, you and I had spoken, I've spoken to staff, part of pushing for this to have the vote on November 10th was to be fair to the petitioner and not unduly delay them. They're incurring cost as well. If they're not going to object at this point to us beyond November 10th, I would say let's just do that.
If we choose to delay, I really don't feel comfortable delaying too much longer, because it's been said tonight, this beginning conversations of this started in 2016. We're 4 years into this. So if we were to delay a month, that's one thing, but to push it back much longer than that, I'm not comfortable with delaying it that much longer.
Yeah, I think rather than concentrate, this is my opinion, concentrating on the calendar, let's concentrate on getting the information you guys need. So if we can, over the holidays, schedule a meeting for you guys to discuss the things that you would want in order to move forward, or if it's just a no. And then if there's a path where you say, here's the things that would me feel like this is a better deal for the town, then let's get to the table with the developer and have that conversation. A month sounds reasonable, but again, it was hard to get this meeting together. We had to move this one 3 or 4 times because we couldn't get folks on the phone. So let's, it's just my opinion. Let's not hold us to the calendar right now over the holidays. Let's focus on getting these meetings to get the information we need to people.
But going back to what Vince said, this originated as a conversation about whether or not we were going to annex, and now it's kind of morphed into something more than that, with stipulations, which I understand, stipulations or restrictions or whatever we want to call them, being something we'd want to discuss more. But are we looking at annexation just in general of the property, or annexation with these stipulations?
Well, I think we need to move on, but and we can have these conversations. My read that at the beginning, yeah, we're talking. This is the reason for this call. The 5 of us or 6 of us were not in every planning and zoning meeting. We're not attorneys, and we're not experts in this field, so we're understanding the particulars and the process. The piece that came up through this discussion, which is probably a good thing out of this meeting, is this doesn't have to be a simple yes, no, kind of thing. We're able to understand some of the minutia and some of the particulars of it. And again, we need to drive towards what's the best for the town. So that's my opinion. I don't necessarily think we have to say well, we shout, it had to be a thumbs up, thumbs down, and we were going to get to it by the end of the call. I think what comes out of this is let's gather the information so that the folks on the council can make the best informed decision for the town that they can. If everybody's comfortable with that, and the developer's not saying, they're going to hold our feet to the fire with moving forward right away, I say let's start tomorrow. Let's start scheduling some times to get together and discuss the what ifs and do those as expeditiously as possible, and go from there. It's my thought. So if nobody else has anything on that, I would say let's turn it over to Mr. Powers and, actually, Alex, let's go back to you. And if you can introduce and give us an intro on this, and as long as I don't want to shortchange this, you said before, so let's give this one its due, and have that discussion as well.
Ryan, before Alex gets into that, I just wanted to again reiterate my position that I have to recuse myself from this particular issue because of a conflict of interest.
Gotcha. Fair enough. Trust your judgment.
Thanks, Henry. So the next development is Patriots Overlook. It is a piece of property that runs out to the north of Park Avenue. Again, in a similar circumstance, there is part of the property that is within the town limits. The petitioner is asking to bring in another parcel or area of acreage into the town to make a complete development. The development simply has several homes at the end of, and I can't remember up by Councilman Wilder, up at the end of the court by the water tower. There will be some homes built there. And then there will be across from Washington Way, there will be an entrance into from the old Farrell property into another section of fallow property that contains another, I believe, if I'm looking off the top of my head, about 20 homes. So again, it's a similar circumstance. It's a town parcel that is well within the petitioner's rights to build within the regulations of the town and the county. And then there's an adjacent property that they're wishing to add on to that in annexation to make a complete development. And that was voted out of the Planning and Zoning Commission on a 3-2 vote to approve. And that's pretty much where we stand. We'll again entertain questions from any of the council members.
To be fair, I'll ask the same question. Houses versus annex versus not annexing, and the amount. I think we've answered. Well, we've got an explanation on the sewage part, so I don't need to ask that again. But as far as houses, I'll ask that to be fair.
So I think overall the development has a total of 30. Again, I don't believe that there's been any much success in Welland Park in that area from the history of my living near that area. So it would be hard to give you a finite number if the annexation or even a relative number. I wouldn't want to put anybody out on a limb. It's hard to say. Again, if you don't annex it, the developer still has the right to build. It would be in the county and subject to their purview, and then it would go into the well and septic issue. Hard to say what they would or would not get out of there. It's just kind of guesswork at this point.
What's the total amount of acreage, just so I can verify?
Hang on one sec. Let me pull up my drawing.
Okay.
Yeah, Alex, I have that information.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
In town right now, there is 13 acres and 0.35, and out of town is 12.66 that we were talking about annexing.
Thanks, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I just wanted to verify that, just so I have all the correct numbers.
And Councilwoman Smith, did you want, so that's the roundabout portion of it about the houses and what annexation brings. Yes, you are correct. You have pretty much the same sewer water issues as Bob said with that. Traffic, I think is the next piece. Again, it's hard to really say what is or isn't going to happen. The Burt Fowler Road area is developed. I mean, we have to admit, it is a pass-through area. I don't know which council person serves that part of Park Avenue and Catholic Hill. So again, and we have another development going over the hill from it, which we are in the process of working with now to get final approval at the Burwager property. So it's all part of the big picture that we look at. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
I don't have as many questions on this one. I know with the other one, and I hate to intermingle them, but the intersection with 30 kind of complicates things a little bit more than this one does in my mind. So I'm looking at concept plan. Does that have on Park Avenue, does that come out right across from Brightside, making that kind of like a clean intersection?
Yes,
I think
the intersection's at Brightside, yes.
Sorry, wrong road. My mistake. I apologize.
So the piece that's currently under construction or has been under construction is kind of like the extension of Brome Court.
Yeah, I sent out some packets with the annexation plan that should have had a map on it, but I can share the screens if you'd like to see them.
Well, I have. I don't know if anybody else needs it. I looked at it earlier, Michelle, and I have it. I'm kind of flipping through it again now.
Okay.
Yeah, Vernon, I think what you'll see is some number of lots will only come off of Brome Court and some lots would go off onto Park Avenue.
Gotcha. Yeah, so some have a driveway directly onto Park. The majority of the development would be on that. I don't know if it has a name yet, but I'll just call it like Brightside across the street.
That should help everybody. That's the latest drawing, what I'm sharing with my screen. I think that's pretty close to where we are now. Michelle did a good job of highlighting in red what is currently town property. And then to the north of the red is currently the approximate area that is up for annexation consideration.
Yeah, this was a drawing that was submitted showing if it wasn't annexed, what they may possibly be able to get. The ones in yellow are the houses that already exist.
Gotcha. So the ones outside of the red, not highlighted in yellow, that's the best guess of what the developer could do without being annexed on well and septic, basically.
Right.
And then is there one which would show with an annexation?
Yes. Hold on a second.
And then are those yellows then currently out of town already?
Yes, those yellow lots are the 4 off conveyances that were done previously. That is where Mr. Help me with his name that comes in to shoot. Just drew a blank. The gentleman that comes into the meetings to contest this, he lives back in here. And then the red is what could be done in town. Now I do have one to share that shows, oops, what happened to it? Can you see it?
Yes.
That's,
Okay, I'm sorry. I can't, I don't know what I'm
oh,
doing
I
here.
think
I'm
I'm
on
looking at it.
So this is just a concept that they sent us to show that, yes, it would enter off of Park Avenue across from Brightside. This would be, this is the town line right here. So if annexed, there would be a few others in here. These are the ones that will come on off of Broome Court. And this was just one plan they showed us, given some open space in between the two. I think we have two of these plans. This was just another layout. Going a little further down the hill
Yeah.
with the lots. But again, these are just concepts giving you an idea. And as far as I know, none of them come off of Park Avenue. This is just these lots, these two lots that he owns right here along Park Avenue.
Oh, okay. I thought so. Those existing things, Michelle, if you go down to like, see where it just says Park Avenue on the plan, and there's like 5 lots there. Are those existing homes? Then I guess it makes sense. I think there's homes there.
Yes.
Yes, these are existing. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So Michelle, this development, like anything that comes in, if it were to be annexed, I guess it was recommended, would go through the same process, right? So we're not approving a plan at this point.
No.
We're considering the annexation. It would still go to subject to
Yes.
ordinance 138 and then everything else that planning and zoning does.
There has been, and Alex, you can correct me if I'm wrong stating this, but there really has been no discussion on the actual layout yet, whether there has been little discussion as to whether we'll require them to do straight half acre lots, or even allow the clustering effect. So none of that has been discussed yet. It's just been they're just trying to give us an idea of what they could possibly show us.
Similar to the discussion we just had, we were going to have a discussion on, what I'm going to call it, what's important to the town. Is it similarly feasible to say, here's the contingent things the town would like to see? Of course, we would need a little bit, probably, Michelle, your expertise, and Tom, you to guide us on the difference between, we don't want to supersede the development process going through planning and zoning. But at the same time, if there was like, there's a big picture type thing, like, hey, we would definitely want to have the intersection, kind of be a T and not be a Z, that sort of thing. And those are my words, but we could probably have the same meeting of the minds with this one, I would imagine, correct?
I'm not sure, Tom. I think that's a little more detailed. That's probably the planning and zoning's. That wouldn't be things that would be put in the resolution. Would you feel that, Tom?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I followed which things we're talking about. But yes, I mean, typically you don't in an annexation agreement get so into the weeds that you are essentially conducting through the annexation process a development plan review. Having said that, it's not infrequent that annexations have annexation agreements with various large issue agreements between developer and town that become a part of the annexation. And I'm not sure you get into that the intersection needs to be a T or a Z at the annexation stage, but there might be some larger issues that impacts that you may address in an annexation agreement at the annexation stage.
That makes sense. I think what we do is when we're able to get together as in the council and think about, what's important to the town, we would need probably some guidance from you on, and Michelle, on, hey, what's customary, what's legal, and kind of make sure that we're not dipping too far in, right? Like I said, like obviously we don't want to talk about the reforestation, but maybe we want to talk about like a larger issue. So without getting too far into that now, I just wanted to bring that up.
Any other questions from the council members? Okay, well, that sounds good. Do any of the members of the commission have anything that they want to round out with? We are at 8:52 p.m. I think we know where everyone is headed or what has to happen. So I'm just going to really leave it up to commission members to round it out, and then the council can take in their own deliberations as they see fit. But we have made our position known, and we'll step back.
Alex, I just want to thank you and the commission for all of your hard work on all of these annexations. I really appreciate that you haven't taken this task that we've given you lightly. You've really seemed to look at a bunch of different aspects, looked at a bunch of different things, and really thought about them and what you feel is or is not in the best interest of the town. And I really appreciate the time and energy that your committee put into all of this.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the compliment. And yes, I would echo your words. The members of the commission have worked very hard. No matter if we agree or disagree on things, it's collegial and we look at the best interest of the town. So thank you very much for the compliment. Greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I'd like to echo Jen's words. Ditto on that. Thank you to all you guys. Alex, to your point, you're not supposed to agree on those things. That's why there's 5 people or 6 people in there. If everybody was in there agreeing, then you're not discussing, you're cheering, right? So get in there, disagree on things, hash it out, and don't punch anybody, right? So I think you guys did a great job.
I thought the echo chamber was the easy way to go.
Hi, Clark Schaefer here. Is it appropriate for me to say anything on behalf of Powers?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'll try to be brief because I know we're getting late. This one is, I think, a little simpler than the previous one. It doesn't have a planned road coming through it. You obviously have scoped it out pretty well and in pretty detailed way. This property is well situated for development and for annexation. It's planned for it. It's shown on all the plans, as you well know. And as you also well know, the question is, does it make sense for the town to annex it? And I think that's the question you focused on here. We think the answer is yes. We do get a few more lots because we get water and sewer for the portion of the property that's outside the town, which is good for us. And my clients are in business, and they've done business with the town before, and they think it's a great town and a good market to sell these kind of single family houses in. All we want in terms of an annexation agreement is really basically a promise of water, that you have water and sewer capacity when we come in. We understand that once we're in, we are subject to your ordinances, laws, and regulations, including adequate facilities, traffic studies, etc. And we further understand, and the Planning Commission made it very clear to us, that the water and sewer situation is one where they will ask us to provide and pay for ourselves, and maybe with a little, reserve juice in there. We're okay with that. We would like to come in. We believe this property is appropriate to come in. We understand that there are concerns with impacts, and especially the traffic impact. Um, uh, we understand that that's an issue that the town needs to deal with going forward, not necessarily directly with this development, but overall. Um, how do you regulate development when every development in Manchester is going to put a couple trips into Route 30? So we think that the control that the town would have over this annexed area would be an important factor in suggesting that this is a good idea. In other words, well, you know what I'm saying. Once they're in the town, these lots, they're subject to your rules and regulations. And we think that's of some value. Furthermore, the public works, sort of the practical logistical implications of having a road that has a sign on it at the end of town snow removal, and then the people beyond that are in the county. Not impossible. It happens. It can be maneuvered, but probably better to have it all in one development. And we further understand that we are subject to review by the Planning Commission after annexation, assuming it occurs, in terms of the layout of the lots, where they enter the public road, where the open space is, what happens to the open space. Is it development open space? Is it offered to the town? We understand that all that is subject to the jurisdiction of the Town Planning Commission. So with that, we appreciate your consideration, and we obviously genuinely desire to annex and get a favorable vote on the annexation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
All right, Mr. Mayor, I think we've probably given you all a lot of homework and a lot of information. The Planning and Zoning Commission, as always, is at the disposal of the mayor and council. If you need some additional information or something from us, we're more than happy to convene and provide you with whatever is needed. Certainly hope that this was, I do think it was well worth everybody's time. And again, I know we're all here for the betterment of the town of Manchester.
Hey, that's all I have. Well said, Alex. Thank you again for all you and the rest of the folks on planning and zoning do, and staff as well. So I know it's a late evening. That's all I have. If that's all everybody else has, but I'll let anybody else pop in here if they have something to say.
I don't think so. Michelle, I would request that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold after I have another item I need to discuss with them real quick. If we have about 10 minutes. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time and effort in the meeting. I'd just like to have the Planning and Zoning Commission hang out for just a minute so we can talk about another development, please. Thank you,
everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Kelly, I don't think you can leave it. You might just want to turn your video off, because if you leave it, it might end it.
It's not letting me leave.
You're stuck, Councilwoman Smith. You're in a